group operate. Well, let me tell you what Total Democracy is not. It's not a political party. It's not a new party. There are 475, I think, political parties registered in this country, and probably a few unregistered ones as well. So we're not adding to that list. What we're doing is taking all those parties that exist, or those that are active, maybe half of them, and asking them to join together, to work together to make change in this country. We as individual small parties at the moment are unable to do that. We're just a little grain of sand. But if you add all those grains together, you create that beach. You create something that's substantial. And that's what we're trying to do. Also, we're not an electoral coalition, although we wouldn't rule that out. But the intention is not necessarily to say we're going to fight election and we're going to agree on where we stand or not stand or whatever. That could happen in the future, but that's not necessary for the existence of total democracy. And I believe that total democracy is quite unique in British politics. As I said at the beginning, there's very few examples of political parties cooperating on campaigns. The coalition we have at the moment, there's two parties working together in coalition. Every single one of them would say, every single member of that party would say, I wish we weren't in that coalition. They would all say, I wish we were running the country on our own.
They also actively work against each other on
Indeed,
issues
indeed.
of national interest, such as the recent boundary changes.
Well, that's clearly a portent for the future. Before the next election, you'll see those two parties splitting apart to create themselves back for a new fight. So they're not very willing. We, however, the groups that are part of this, the four founding parties, are willing participants, and that is very unique in this country. In Europe, it's quite common, but in the UK, the system is designed for competition, to be fighting each other. One winner takes all. We're trying to change that, amongst many things. So, what will we be doing then? Well, we'll be launching campaigns of common interest. These will be decided by the groups themselves, and the majority agree to promote a campaign. We will do so, but it's an opt-in campaign. You decide that you want to be part of it. You don't have to be part of that campaign. If you don't feel you've got the resources, the time, or the interest in that topic, you don't do it. If you have, you join in. So it's a very friendly, take it or leave it cooperation as well. We're here to build friends, not make enemies. We will produce a constitution. My colleague Jean from the DRP is working on a constitution which will deal with all the minutiae, how that works. Whilst we're all friends at the moment, we may expand to 50 parties or 50 groups and independents, and there will need some sort of structure to ensure that it works properly and smoothly. Because obviously we're human beings, and human beings do have weaknesses such as egos and selfishness and thinking that they know better than everybody else. So we need to ensure that we try and avoid falling out. You know, this is not a short-term electoral coalition, which is the other thing that probably exists. This is something very, very different. So I'd like to see this develop over the next months and years for something long-term, which is here to stay as an alternative to what we have at the moment. Now, we are starting and launching the first campaign, which we're going to mention today, and that is called None of the Above. Basically, as I mentioned, votes have been falling. The politicians have been desperate to try and increase the turnout because that gives a moral legitimacy. Although I read a politician said not so long ago, in response to the falling turnouts, he said, we only need one vote for legitimacy. So what he was saying is if nobody voted except one person, and that one person elected himself, it wouldn't matter to him. You know, that's how cynical these politicians are. However, in public, they say we need to increase the turnout because we're not very legitimate. Oh, we've only got 20% turnout. What about the 80%? So their answer to that is, oh, the 80% are apathetic. They don't care anyway, so we don't care. But what we're saying is that those 80% aren't apathetic. Some are, but actually the majority are disillusioned. They're unhappy with the professional politicians. They're unhappy with the laws that are enacted. They're unhappy with the entanglements that Britain is involved in around the world. They're unhappy about lots of things, and all of them are not apathetic reasons. They're disillusioned. They're looking for an alternative, and at the moment they haven't found one. So we're going to campaign, and Jean will explain a bit more later. We're going to launch this first campaign asking for the government to introduce a law which puts on every ballot paper a box which says none of the above. In Australia, it's illegal not to vote. Therefore, they do have good turnouts, 90% in elections. But it's not because the Australians are necessarily more political than people in the UK. It's illegal not to vote, so therefore they do vote. But, so if you forced, and this is not part of our campaign, but if, say, for instance, the government said in desperation, we need to increase that 20% to 100%, they'd have to probably make it illegal not to vote. And what we're saying is, you need to give people the opportunity to express their displeasure with the present system. Because there's in many areas, you don't even get 10 parties standing, you might have 2 or 3. And most people will say, I don't want to vote for those parties, I don't agree with them. So if I go and vote, what do? Well, I can spoil it, and most people are too frightened to do that. It's technically illegal, so that most people don't do that. But if you had this box, none of the above, I would think there'd be a rush to vote. I think most of us here would be lining up to vote, albeit for none of the above. And none of the above, no doubt, would win the election. In reality, of course, you could introduce checks and balances which said that none of the above got, say, over half the whole total turnout. It was null and void. But we're not here to talk about the techniques or the implications. We're talking about a genuine attempt to increase turnout, increase engagement of the public, without legitimising the parties we don't want. I believe that that campaign is a very viable campaign. And I believe that in the next few months, when we roll out it with petitions, with leaflets, various means of promotion, I think you will enjoy promoting that campaign, because you can say to your neighbours, no, this is a way to hit back. If there isn't a party there that you can support at this present time, you can at least show your displeasure, to show that you're not the apathetic oik that the politicians would like to portray you, but in fact you are concerned, but you just don't like them. So total democracy presently is 4 small centrist parties: National Liberal Party, Democratic Reform Party, Popular Democratic Party and the Popular Alliance. Now I've no doubt in time we will expand that group to more parties. We won't do that until there's a constitution, for the reasons I explained. We'll also provisionally have agreed to expand that to non-party groups. You know, reform groups, pressure groups, independents who are not part of a group, all kinds of groups, think tanks, whatever, coming together to work for the greater good. And that's what we're doing. Again, it's unique. It doesn't exist. I went to a meeting a couple of months ago to another event which was talking about cross groups working together. And there's something else going on out there, mainly amongst intellectuals rather than ordinary people. But there is another group going out provisionally called ACT, and that is other campaigning groups, not parties. We may be able to link up with them eventually, because they're disillusioned as well, and they come together because of the expense scandal and because of the democratic deficit between politicians and the ordinary people. But these are intellectuals. But I believe that we can have a relationship with them. We've got some of our people working in that group as well. So there's great futures out there, but of course the oak tree hasn't been built yet. We are just a little acorn under the ground. So we have a lot of work to do for us to expand. But I believe with the right resources and with a bit of luck and with everybody's help here and all the the 100 or so members we've got out there, we will ultimately be able to do that. So, in the long run, I believe it's the only realistic strategy to to changing things.